Hey guys, stay tuned after this episode for a special announcement. Alrighty, so before I get started, I just want to let everyone know thank you for your patience, and no, this does not mean we are starting Season 2, however, this will be considered the first episode. And yes, that does mean that you should not be expecting another one in a week from now. It's still scheduled for September 21st as of this date. So, what are we going to be talking about? Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about anything that has to do with comic books. However, we are going to be talking about something that has to be related with comic books. Nerds! Now, it may not surprise any one of you who knows of this person that I'm a big fan of Bob Chipman's, or Movie Bob's, show The Big Picture on The Escapist. And as 2 weeks ago, of this recording anyways, I was watching the newest episode of The Big Picture on The Escapist, and a very interesting notion was made, which I'm just going to insert this clip here instead of trying to explain it to you.
I'm going to phrase this as carefully as I possibly can. When you look at the stock characteristics of the post-60s nerd archetype, i.e. extremely high-skilled in very specific cognitive fields, introversion, difficulty in social situations, said archetype runs somewhat parallel to the high-functioning end of what's called the autism spectrum. Is it possible that the classical nerd stereotype were in fact simply caricatures of folks with conditions that weren't generally recognized as conditions by the public at large until fairly recently? I honestly don't know, and I do know that that line of thought inevitably leads into hairy areas of discussion like overdiagnosis and flexible boundaries, but it is an interesting notion, and I'm seeing it raised more and more lately.
It does raise a very interesting question. Considering the fact that autism wasn't properly diagnosed until 1963, it is relatively possible that The Nutty Professor, which came out in that same year, did exhibit more autistic personality traits than nerd traits. However, are those traits 1 and 2 the same? Well, stereotypically, yeah, they are. Nerds and autistic people, I know because I'm fall into both categories, often obsess over trivial things such as comic books, science fiction, and various others. And by trivial, I don't mean that they're stupid or that it's a waste of time or whatever. I mean, practically every form of entertainment is a waste of time, so you can take that for what it's worth. But does that make all autistic people nerds automatically? Well, yes and no in my opinion. You see, growing up in a house where every family member in one way was a nerd, not all of my family members are autistic. So what makes a nerd? I mean, in this day and age, with comic book movies now being mainstream, whereas before they were considered only nerd territory unless you were a child, it also raises a very interesting point. Do nerds even exist? Well, yes, of course they do. We always will. But what exactly makes a nerd? Well, someone who obsesses over these things, in my opinion. So I suppose in a way, autism could be considered a default definition into nerdism. Now, of course, I'm not going to play any of the other clips from that episode of The Big Picture. If you really want to go see the entire episode, there's a link in the description box down below. However, I do find this notion quite intriguing. And because I myself am autistic, yeah, this kind of hits home for me. So that's pretty much all I want to share with you guys today. I don't really have any funny jokes or anything witty to say. I just found this episode very interesting. So, yeah, I guess that's it for me. Guess I'll catch you guys after the ending credits. Bye. Hey guys, I'm CJ. So I guess by now you guys may have figured it out that it's pretty serious when I show up in person in these History of Comic Heroes videos. With that being said, there's something that I need to have a serious discussion with you guys about. That's autism. Especially for anyone who's currently living in either Canada or the United States of America. It seems as though these two countries seem to shrug off autism as no big deal. Well, did you guys know that in 2020, half the world's population will be autistic in some way, either being autistic themselves or being closely related to someone who is autism, therefore carrying the autism gene? Did you guys also know that people who are autistic are receiving a lack of funding from the government, and that the Canadian government anyways wants to cut back funding on these areas even more? Now, I'm not going to tell you guys who to vote for. However, I am going to inform you guys who you maybe should think twice about voting for. The Conservative and Liberal parties here in Canada, first off, the Liberals want to privatize our healthcare, which will make it harder for people with autism to get tested for it and to make sure whether or not these people have it, therefore making it harder for these people to get the help they need. The Conservative government wants to cut back funding to these areas by training less nurses and less people who are trained in helping people with speech patterns, which is a very big problem for people who are autistic. Now, I myself was almost failed by this country, and many people, and I mean like this is literally in the hundreds, possibly even thousands of people across Canada and the US continue to be failed by these systems, mainly because our government will not give the funding that is needed to these organizations. Now, there is an organization called Autism Speaks. No, I'm not currently associated with them, but I hope to work something out and maybe get myself and possibly this show associated with them to help out and do my part to help the autism community. Because there are people the same age as me, older than me, and younger than me who are, well, not in as great of a place as I am right now. Look, I'm not going to tell you guys who to vote for, but I am going to tell you guys this. If you know someone who is autistic or have someone in your family who's autistic, or even if you don't, maybe you should think twice about re-electing Stephen Harper, or any conservative for that matter, and the same goes for the Liberal parties. I know I myself will be proudly voting NDP, regardless of what other people may think or say about it. And no, this does not mean that I'm telling you guys to go vote for NDP. However, they seem to be one of the few parties in Canada who wants to help people with autism and with other disabilities. They also are one of the few parties in Canada who can actually make a difference. So by going to vote for the Green Party, yeah, sorry, you know what? As nice as some of the Green Party ideals are, the chance of them getting elected, or at least elected within this decade, are pretty slim. No offense to anyone who is a Green Party supporter. So with that being said, I'm going to leave you guys now, and I hope this helped. See you guys later.